Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. I like this season. Do you? I think it's a pretty good one. Let's watch.
Bawled my fucking eyes out.
I'm really sorry.
No. That was a good learning experience. I learned so much. I'm glad it's Jimmy because I love Jimmy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your decision doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't mean it was a wrong decision.
Okay, so it's totally normal when you're dumped, especially if it's happening in this fashion, that you would be very, very sure or highly suspect that the person that didn't choose you made a mistake, because it feels real, of course. It feels like love. You feel love and affection from the person, and you don't feel the love that is going on between the other two people. And, we're pretty self-centered creatures, and so we have a hard time imagining that happening. Plus, it's maybe evolved in us to couple, right, to imagine the love to be transcendent of something, all the songs and the poems and everything. It's like, no one has ever loved you like this. I've never felt love like this before. This is amazing. And because it, if it's exaggerated, it compels us even further. But, every time anyone has ever loved anybody, it has been just regular human love that is the same as everyone else's. So it's normal. So he's saying that, and it could be, so I should say, when Trevor arrived in this conversation, I was just sent some links, and I actually started looking into it, and there are some credible allegations against both Jeremy and Trevor, and some allegations against Jimmy that are dubious. But to talk about Trevor, there are articles, Business Insider, and Entertainment Tonight, in which the journalists actually got firsthand information from a woman that claims, and actually has receipts of text, which of course can be doctored, but at the very least there's the claim from someone, and pretty detailed claim, that Trevor was in a relationship, maybe through the pods, with another woman, or might at the very least broke up with someone just before going into the pods, and might not have been sincerely breaking up or sincerely in the first relationship to begin with, because the woman seemed to be thinking it came out of nowhere. And then it's either the same woman or a different woman that he's with after the pods, and then he broke up with her just before Netflix showed this season. Maybe it was coincidence, but maybe not. Anyway, so I guess the allegation is that Trevor didn't go into the pods legitimately, and that he was just trying to get fame, which is pretty gross. And we can't know. It's possible that this woman misunderstood the relationship. Wouldn't be the first time that happens. That he wasn't leading her on, that it was a casual dating relationship, and he was wanting to find the love of his life, and said, well, this dating relationship isn't really going anywhere, and so I'll continue to have this relationship because it's casual, but when I go on the show, I don't really. I'm going to break up with a person, and I'll try to find the love of my life. That could have happened. And then when that didn't happen, he goes back to that person, and then it just happens to break up just before the show airs. I don't know. It has some suspiciousness to it, but we can't know that. But apparently, there are references to screenshots that indicate that either he or Jeremy actually told people that he wasn't going on the show legitimately, which is also not necessarily that he was you could have someone that would go on the show or say, I'm just going on the show because who cares? And then a part of you is like, well, maybe. And then you go on the show and you start to shift, and that could happen. But it's also very viable that so another woman came forward about Jeremy saying very similar things. And Jeremy claims that he broke up with the woman and it was a legit breakup, and he even claims he told people in the pods he just got out of a relationship. Okay, I guess we'll wait to see the receipts. Plus, they could be doctored. It's just I don't know. But we'll add that, and I did strongly suspect for Jeremy that he might have not gone on legitimately based on how flippant. If anything, it sort of lets him off the hook a little bit. But like I was saying, also a separate psycho. Because if you go on the show, if he went on the show legitimately and he legitimately was engaged to Laura and then he treated her with such callousness and flippancy, that's a problem. If he doesn't go on legitimately, it makes sense that he would not care about Laura, but it raises this whole other thing of like, how do you go into the pods and literally trick another human being into believing that you love them and want to marry them, ask them to marry you, act like you want to marry them, maybe even have sex with them, with someone who thinks they're going to spend the rest of your life with them, and then you just basically ghost them. And you're like, oh, Sarah, well, let's hang out with her. Yeah, whatever, Laura. That's worse, really. So either way, something's going on in the edit and in the reporting. Can't know. For Trevor, though, given his presentation, when I polled all y'all after episode 6, everyone loved Trevor. I think he was the most liked person. I think you had AD and Amy and Trevor. I think Trevor was most liked. Probably because there was the least amount of data available. But anyway, so to hear that he might have been going on the show illegitimately, now maybe he changed his mind. People can make allegations, but I don't think you usually have people coming forward that would give such specificity and give interviews. It's one thing to throw something out on Reddit or something. It's another thing to be interviewed by reporters, put your name out there, because then other people in your life could come forward and say, she's a liar. So, you're really putting yourself out there, especially with Trevor, because everyone loved him. So if I, trying to wrap my head around that one, that's pretty gross. I guess all's well that ends well because Chelsea didn't choose him. But what if she had, if he wasn't legit? And then you think about his whole presentation, how he came, it was a whole thing, just some sort of act. My favorite book or my favorite movie is The Notebook. And maybe it is, it's fine. There's nothing, incredibly strange about someone that presents like him liking The Notebook. Who cares? It's a popular movie. I've never even seen it. I saw, I think, one scene in the rain, and I just thought like, okay, I kind of get the gist of this. But I don't know. It's just not really been on my radar. Is it a good movie? Will I like it? I like both the actors. So if it was all some sort of trick, I guess that would be the thing, is to ask the woman, is he actually like that? Because maybe he's like that. But what if he wasn't? What if he wasn't? And then you think about the whole presentation, and they actually, on some of the articles, were posting some of his TikToks, and he's, I'm an internet whore as well, just in a different way. But he comes across as someone that, at least, I don't know, in my eyes, it looks like he is, trying to get things off the ground in a certain way online, using his body, lots of stuff with his shirt off, and certain angles that are, it'd be one thing if he just doesn't have a shirt on, he's just walking around and lifting weights, but it's like very particular angles. Let's put it that way. God bless him, he can do whatever he wants, and what are you going to do? But you just wonder, like, you put the whole profile together, and then the way he was coming across and how sweet he was and how nice he was to Jimmy, is that because he didn't care about Chelsea? What's going on? Or he was legit on the show and fell in love with Chelsea, or he went on the show somewhat illegitimately and then changed his mind. You could see that happening over 10 days. You can imagine someone being like, oh, maybe I'm into this. I actually met some, that could happen. I have no idea. The other allegation was against Jimmy, that a woman came forward publicly saying that she was his fiance or girlfriend or something before or during the pods or something. And contrary to Trevor in particular, Jimmy, because Trevor has not responded as of where I'm at in space and time right now, But Jimmy immediately came out and says, I don't even know who this person is. I've never met that person. And if that's a lie, if he was involved with this woman and he's just claiming he doesn't know her, that would be pretty easily refuted, right? With photographs or text receipts or other people like, yeah, they were dating. I think the allegation, maybe they were engaged. I don't know. Or was it Jeremy? There's a lot of the reporting. It's kind of hard to follow. But anyway, so I tend to think that for at least the allegation, if I was to put money down on something, I'd say that someone was just trying to get some attention. Or they're literally delusional. That happens. And they actually believe that they were the partner of Jimmy. And then you got to wonder, like, I don't know, it just raises major question marks, especially about Jeremy, because he's already exhibited behavior that is what I'm calling callous and lacking empathy and remorse and self-awareness. So, wow. I mean, you put that whole profile together, and my goodness. With Trevor, it's hard to say because we didn't see anything like that. But nice people can make mistakes because they're thirsty. So I don't know. What do you think? And by the time you watch this video, it'll be far in the future, and you probably have more information than me right now.
For two people, and
That's what this is all about.
it is.
I think I asked this question in there, but I'm gonna ask it again.
Okay.
If orders were switched and I went first,
Yeah.
would there be a different outcome?
Right. He did ask this. And if he legit fell in love and he is legit still sprung in the same way that Jess, do people say sprung still? I imagine that they don't. That just like Jess and just like others, it's like, oh, you know, I the one that got away, I in my heart wish you would have picked me. In my heart, I wish you would leave Jimmy. But in my head, I'm like, that's silly, and I hope you the best. So that's okay. It's normal. That's what you do with it. And he's asking that question again, and looked at it in a certain angle, it's manipulative. But if she's easily manipulated, then that is a problem, right? Yeah, this is part of the breakup process. I talk about this. When you break up, she broke up with him. And when you break up, there are, in my mind, healthy conversations you can have afterwards. And the person that got dumped typically will present a lot of bumps in the road. They're not going to be completely over it or completely balanced or completely unemotional. You know, they're going to have some unfinished business, and it's not going to come out pretty. It's up to the person who did the dumping to hold the line and to provide closure, to help the person. You know, sometimes the dumped person isn't seeking closure. They're seeking the relationship. Sometimes that'll help, right? Because if you don't interface with them, they're always wondering, you know, they want to be with me. But, you know, having these conversations, it gives Chelsea an opportunity to double down and say, no, you know, I'm sorry, but I am okay with my choice. I love Jimmy. I want to marry him. And if things had turned out differently, it could have been you, I suppose, but we'll never know. I'm with Jimmy now, you know, and that can help someone in Trevor's position, I think particularly given his angle right now, to go further down the grieving process and the acceptance process, right? Because if you are stuck in that loop of like, I don't accept this, sometimes having these kind of interactions can help.
There wouldn't have been, just because Jimmy and I had a conversation.
You have to say that to be a good person.
No,
I know.
no.
There's a lot of emotions.
Wait, what did you say? Was he just making a joke, or does he actually believe? Let's rewind that.
There wouldn't have been, just because Jimmy and I
You
had a
have to say
conversation.
that to be a good person.
No,
I know.
no.
There's a lot of emotions.
I hope you do know, like.
Okay, they kind of edited something out there. I think I would like to think that Trevor said, "Yeah, totally. You're with him now," something like that. But without that in there, it looks like he is arrogantly believing that if he had just been first, that she would be with him. And you know, maybe that's even true. But to just, you know, to ask her a legit question and then to act like you know the answer.
My number one up until
the last day when I wasn't.
Yeah.
Going into the last day, I was one.
Huh, interesting. We didn't know that. So both Jimmy and Chelsea had others as number one until the last day. We know why Jimmy changed his mind, because unfortunately he basically provoked Jess into being a little upset, and that really, it's interesting looking at the full story, because the amount of upsettedness that Chelsea has exhibited and targeted him with, you would think he's very comfortable and okay with it and forgiving, but Jess had this tiny bit of prickliness that was slowly provoked over time. And then he's like, nope, you're no longer my number one. Now it's Chelsea. But for Chelsea, what was it that changed her mind? Was it that she just went with Jimmy first? I mean, it kind of looked that way. I mean, it's edited, so God knows. But in the pods, the way her body language, she was so overwhelmed. And, knowing what we know now, or hypothesizing what we're hypothesizing now, it's possible that given what she might have regarding her schemas and her working model of self, sometimes people in that position, there's two things. One, so I don't know about her, but I'll just talk about all the clients. I specialize in borderline and various points on the spectrum. You have severe and moderate and mild. And by mild, I mean people that have just a few of the signs and their traumas are on the mild side, but it does create problems. You have, moderate. That by my severe, I'm saying those people actually qualify for the label in the DSM. And moderate is what we would traditionally call, like, you have traits. But I even think on a scale from 1 to 100, there's not just 3. You can have someone that's, 60% or something. It's just a arbitrary kind of gauge I have in my mind that is based on my own sense of things, and based on data and assessment. But for these individuals, there are two things. One, they're very other focused, and so they are very influenced by others and can be very emotionally influenced by others. Their differentiation isn't robust enough to be able to withstand things. The second thing is that because they weren't attuned to enough as a child, they don't have enough knowledge of who they are. They will say that they feel empty on the inside, but they're not empty on the inside. They're a human, and they have an inside, and they have an inner world. They have emotions and needs. But because they didn't have that mirroring and reflecting of emotions from parents and attunement enough, the child never learned their inner world. People don't just naturally know their inner world. They have to be guided and shepherded and told. You look upset. Is that how you feel? I don't know how I feel. And oh, you look like you're having a good time. Oh, I'm having a good time. It's not automatic that you would know. And if you don't have enough of that, or it's there's a threat like abuse or abandonment or something that distracts you, even if people are attuned, as an adult, you don't actually know how you feel. You don't know who you are. You don't have self-esteem even to stand on, because you don't even, in order to have self-esteem, you have to feel, it's weird, but you have to feel like you have a self, because we're lots of different things. Like right now, I am doing a video for you, and I'm not really focusing on my feelings and my emotions, my sensations. I'm thinking, I'm in my head, and I'm trying to make sure I'm staying within the camera, all that kind of stuff. And, my focus is outside of myself. But I also, if I wanted to, turn off the camera and I could just sit here and have a focus and feel my innerness. Our words don't really help us, but for people with borderline, they often will say they feel empty. There's an abyss inside. It's very terrifying. It's not just like, oh, there's an abyss. It is a very uncomfortable feeling. You can imagine it's just like this unknown emptiness that you're nothing. You're like invisible. You don't exist. There's a lot of words for it. So as a symptom of that, they don't know how to make important decisions, because when we make important decisions, especially like this, we dig down deep. Like when Jimmy, because I think Jimmy has some sense of who he is, as he's dating both Jess and Chelsea, he is looking for an answer on the inside, some sense of like, who makes me feel good? Who do I have the most optimism with? Who am I attracted to? Who am I driven toward? Who do I feel comfortable with? And all that requires knowing how you feel, being connected with who you are, and also valuing who you are. Well, people with borderline, given what they went through growing up, they have a compromised sense of that. At the severe end, they have no connection with it. Moderate, mild, there's different gradations. But when they're asked to choose, Trevor's like, hey, me. Jimmy's like, me. And you're Chelsea, and you watch other people make decisions, and you're thinking, okay, I think you're just supposed to know, right? But we didn't see evidence of that. Now, we wouldn't necessarily, but it could look the way that it looked in the pods, where it was just reactive to what she was getting. When Trevor was being nice to her and showering her with love, it was, and of course, because it feels good, and Jimmy, and then and it's possible that lack of connection with self, that the first person to ask her, she would say yes, because she doesn't know how to make a decision. And people will even say these kinds of things. They just say, I just wish someone would make all my decisions for me, which for me, given that I have a connection with myself, is abhorrent to me. I hate it when other people make decisions for me, unless I truly have no idea what to do. Like if I had to decide about, I don't know, I'm trying to think what it would be. What sort of Cuisinart food processor? I don't even know the name for it. Some cooking utensil. I wouldn't know. I'd be like, you choose. But some people, even big decisions, because they don't have that center to themselves to guide them, and so they just figure, well, other people seem to know how to make these decisions. Can you just make this choice for me? But that's no way to get your needs met, because no one knows what your needs are, and if you don't know, then no one will know, and it's not their fault they don't know, but there's a path forward to knowing, so they can start to actually make choices. So it is possible, given everything that we saw, that for Chelsea, if Trevor had gone first, she would have said yes. I would like to think that's not true for everyone's sake, I suppose, but given what we've seen and given what I've seen clinically, there's a chance of that.
I care about you, and I hope you do know, like, there was no question of how I felt about you. Like, yeah. I did love you, and I do love you. I think you're amazing, and seeing you and talking to you is really nice for me. I feel like life with you would be really fun, and I feel like you would give...
Yeah, they're editing this as well, and there's a pretty good chance, and I would hope, that both Jimmy and Chelsea were sprinkling in a lot of things like, I'm with Jimmy now and I love him, but, I could see things working more, that kind of conversation. They're taking those snippets. They're clearly editing it, but I don't know if they're editing out those kind of stuff. I imagine that they are, though. It makes for better drama, which annoys me. I mean, it would still be good drama to see that whole conversation. I don't appreciate trying to manipulate us. I guess I don't know if they're manipulating us or not, because they've manipulated us in the past and they're editing it, so I can't tell. And that pisses me off, because is what's really happening. I'm always trying to figure that out. And scenes like this, I just have no idea. We're seeing something. We're seeing at least an angle to the conversation. It's possible that this is exactly, you cry wolf enough times and no one comes.
And you were giving that to me?
Yeah.
And, which is, that comes with an engagement. But I feel like it would be really fun and easy with you. And it's yeah.
I'm not like an arguer.
Although, in the edit, similar to Jess and Jimmy, it looks like maybe this, although, Kwame and Micah were way beyond this at the pool, so it could just be the normal sorts of conversations you have after falling in love with someone and then seeing them for the first time and saying goodbye. So it could be that. But it is tempting to think about, what if Chelsea and Trevor give it a shot? Well, I do wonder. But I would imagine that Chelsea's problems will go wherever she goes, which I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying her if I'm even close to the mark, that the traumas don't just go away. If Jimmy were Jeremy, I would say, well, I don't know, because Jeremy's pretty triggering, but Jimmy is not. So if anything, it could be way worse if the allegations about him that I've been reading are true. But with Jimmy and Jess, it's that one's hard to know too, because Jimmy, it's hard to know what his issues are, because the situation or the edit hasn't given him a chance to really reveal it. Maybe with Jess, I think he feels inferior to Jess. He talked about how intelligent. He said she was the smartest person he'd ever met. And I wonder if that would kind of tweak him a little bit. I wonder if it did tweak him a little bit. But it is tempting to think, so Jim, if they somehow managed to work it out, and Jimmy and Jess were to date, I mean, I would imagine it would just be like any other relationship that has the same likelihood of lasting forever, which isn't actually very good. Could they be a good match? Maybe. We don't really know what Jess's issues are. She has demonstrated a lot of maturity and humility in spite of her arrogance at times, just, mild, not, I don't know. To me, the arrogance about her looks is resorted to when she feels hurt and she might feel kind of low. It's not like she just walks around saying how hot she is. She said that upon being dumped, right? And then she says that when she's talking about how much butterfly she has, and she's like, I don't know what it'd be like if I saw him. And then it kind of sneaks, it's something that she resorts to in the moment. As a therapist, I don't have a call on that. I don't have an opinion, but as a citizen, I would wonder if Jimmy would have a better life with anyone else, honestly. Now, there's a chance that Chelsea recovers, works really hard in therapy. People like Chelsea with that work can be some of the best partners in the world. Lots of love and lots of attention from people like Chelsea, lots of care, lots of emotional awareness. With recovery, they can have a carry with them a lot of the pros of preoccupied attachment. So I'm not saying she's like universally doomed, even if I'm reading her right.
No.
Even if I did something terrible, I don't see you like yelling at me. I don't think couples should like.
And then in light of the articles, is this just some weird manipulation that Trevor has, or is this just honest loss reactivity that he just is doing the typical thing that people do when they get dumped? It's just like, hey, I really think you and I would be a better fit, don't you? That's normal. It's not great. I don't recommend entertaining those thoughts, and especially not saying it. It's just setting you up for pain, and it's evidence of loss. So similarly, when you have a scenario, say your dog is, well, I'll just say for myself, my cat was sick, took him into the vet, and they looked him over, and the vet came out and said, yeah, I'm sorry to say that all evidence is showing that your cat is on his last legs, so I recommend euthanasia. And, long story short, I couldn't accept that. It turned out I was right, that with some aggressive antibiotics, over time, he eventually pulled out and had a number of years more. But I suppose if he was on his last leg, I'll talk about another cat that died. This was before, and he was, declining, and took him to the vet, and the vet says a similar thing, and they're giving you the options, like, well, there's this aggressive treatment, and if you do this, maybe it'll help. but you might even, just be squeezing another few months out of life for the cat, and you got to think about quality of life, all this stuff. But I couldn't accept that it was true. I believed the vets, veterinarians, but I couldn't accept that we were at the end of the road. And I said, okay, well, I'll think about it. And I took him home, and he declined even more rapidly. And by the time I could, do or request euthanasia, I actually had someone come out to the house. I had waited too long. I should have done it maybe a couple days before, especially the day. I probably should have done it when the vet had said what they said, but I couldn't accept it. And I think we can understand that, right? It's hard that, the grief begins not just at the death, but, as the death is beginning, right? As the knowledge of the loss is setting in, and I couldn't accept it. It's the same when you get dumped, potentially, that you're like, no, this can't be happening. You're making a mistake. That's almost universal. This could be a part of that. It wasn't that long ago that he got dumped. If he truly fell in love. There's another world, if you believe the allegations about him, and he's just a manipulative bastard who is playing a game for clout. Gross. I'd like to think it's not door number 2. Hopefully it's not door number 2. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.